video actually on Empire Total War. Here we go. Empire Total War is, of course, the famous game in which there's a lot of violence, shooting, and based on 18th century, 19th century fighting. I have to admit, it's probably the most strategic game I've ever seen on this computer. I'm very impressed with it. So I'm probably going to start with one of the most intense campaigns. But we're going to start off easy. I have all this unlocked as usual. But this is what you're going to expect from episode 1, the Jamestown Colony. It's in 1607, where of course the Americans first went there. Very, very bloody, a lot of disease and all that. You're going to see that in the intro. Hope you enjoy. You probably won't hear my voice, as I want you to hear it. Here we go. I also want to make a special shout out to my editor and one of my best YouTube subscribers, Pancaking.
Our war on British tyranny begins tonight. In Boston, brave men fight for the right to govern themselves. Tonight, we fight for freedom. As I bear witness to the sacrifice of this generation, I take great comfort in the memory of our forefathers. Those pioneering men who traveled to these shores seeking a new life. Like the intrepid Captain John Smith and his fellow settlers, we too seek a new world. Not only for ourselves, but for future generations of Americans. As I look back on their endeavors, at the unknown dangers that awaited the pioneers over every rise and behind every tree, I am reminded that I play but a small part in a much greater story.
That was the intro to this. Let's begin our fighting.
Ready yourselves, men!
That was one of the effects where you don't hear the gunshots. That's probably one of the weird things about the intro to this game. As you can see, this is like in 1607 Indians.
Cover,
Instead of the Iroquois, it's the Postadian Confederacy.
Steady! Hold the line!
As you can see, there's already men charging up the hill. The forces are a lot smaller in the beginning due to it just being a plain intro. Forces can get a lot larger. I think the maximum on the normal stuff is about 160 men for regular infantry and 80 men for different types of troops. The Native Americans, all fight with tomahawks and all that. And most of stuff based off fighting Native Americans is being better defensive with guns, as they usually don't use guns and are more famous with tomahawks. As you can see, Native Americans are losing their hope, and the kills against my men are low. They have regular swords with their usual 1607 muskets. My men aren't, these men aren't really good in the beginning with playing the muskets. They're probably more effective with hand-to-hand combat until they get into larger groups. Oh, here comes the general. Right there. That's the main guy, like right in the middle, him. That's him.
Retreat!
As you also learn in the intro, this white flag over here, it shows that they're routing, and it even shows descriptions on if they're wavering, if they're concerned, what they're concerned about. Very descriptive game. That's probably one of the good traits about it. Alright, my men are starting to see casualties now, but they still even have ironically, the flag of the British in 1607. They also fight by 16th century terms with being a gentleman, and they all carry either swords or just plain muskets without bayonets on them. And we've won. You can easily tell by the win expectancy graph right here. And if you can't read this, it says victory is yours. You can choose either to end the battle now or continue playing to run down the routed enemy. As you can see, Dom 1301, which is me. Losses 13, enemy killed 78. Losses, one of them was attained by their own men, so yes, pretty good. Here we are in Jamestown, Virginia, and we have jobs and all that in here. Here, that's Jamestown. This is 1607 when the colonists barely arrived here.
The number in the hourglass indicates you have entered a
You mostly have militia in the beginning. Since it's pretty poor and all is brand new, don't expect a lot of new buildings and war. But the British government does pay you good in the beginning, so it's always important to construct a pretty large army. So you always wait a few terms and you build up a huge force, and by the time they face the natives, they just fall apart.
Built a peasant farm and local fishery in the Jamestown region.
Alright. As you can see, our army's building up. I'm just going to give it a few more turns. Okay. Then I'm going to... As a little hint, just hold space, and it actually makes your troops go by faster. That'll be really helpful when you're skipping turns in the future, as it does get more involved and more worldly and more advanced. Very helpful to have. And we're going to fight them here, where today's Maryland is.
The highlighted area represents the extent to which this army can move.
They did surrender, which you can make them do. As you can see right here, the Native Americans are right here, and I'm going to crush them with an easy victory. As they're trapped in the south, they only have 360 men, so I'm going to show you the first ever battle in 1608. Hey, welcome. We're here at the battle, as you can see. Strangely, you actually see modern buildings over here. That's probably one of the unique traits in which you can house your men in. Actually, very helpful. Based in 1607 fighting, and you know, most of the 18th century, 17th century, is that these men actually are fight better when they're in longer lines. Native Americans usually just charge them with bows, arrows, and you know, just plain regular hand-to-hand fighting like they did in the 14th century. But that's always more important. The thing that's different though is that the Native Americans load a lot faster. So after you fight one volley, they're gonna shoot right back, and it does take your men about 10 seconds to reload. So that's pretty low. So always make sure your men are on massive lines like this. The longer they are, the more you can fit in one volley, and that's always very effective. It's probably a lot better to actually do that instead of just getting them into long lines with very short, accurate shots, or else you're pretty much doomed. Also, this game is much easier with a mouse, so don't forget to buy one. It's actually a lot easier with that. There's a lot of grouping and a lot of troop movements that you need to do, and there is quite a lot of engaging. Native Americans are actually real good at hiding, and if they don't attack you, then you usually go towards them. But with massive units, you can easily just crush them, and if they just have plain tomahawks, then they'll just fall apart. Just give it time for your men to load and all that, and you can easily tell when they're good. Walking actually doesn't affect them. Like, it doesn't affect like their actual fighting, like when they're in melee combat, because that affects how they do. What's that? Damn it. See? Oh, hold on, let me cut this out for a sec. Much better. As you can see, Native Americans are already falling apart. They've taken about 65 casualties. Yep, there we go. They fell apart. Sorry for the background. My desk is pretty shaky. Alright, here we go. Here comes their last tribe. Now, these men might actually do some trouble to us, because the last men over here, they did cause some casualties. But it was pretty low, so it can't really affect the entire military. And there is a lot of marching in this one, as you can easily tell. and then they just plain stop, and they're in synchronized formation. So they just stop, and then they move up a little, as they always do in like modern fighting. Well, at the time. And then, oh, see, here come their bows. Oh, yep, here we go. Actually, interesting fact, most natives like don't actually even get in lines like these guys do. They usually just are all spread out. However, our troops in 1607, they get into massive lines, which are way more effective. Oh, here's John Smith's band. With a massive line like that, you're going to do devastating effect. And also, another little hint. If you're fighting in other campaigns, melee combat actually brings up experience a lot faster than regular combat actually does. Oh, victory, of course. Heroic victory. See, we received 94 casualties, extremely light, and I massacred all 360 of their men.
Onwards!
As we can see, now we're going to move up to today's Pennsylvania.
Ready for battle.
New units have been
Alright.
recruited.
So we're gonna still move them up, and we're gonna move our reserves I have from another two divisions and move them up also to Pensacola.
Hold the control key to select multiple
Ready
units.
for orders.
Alright, I'm gonna link them up with others to become a more powerful force. I think we're gonna end there with that auto-resolve battle. We're gonna finish off Pennsylvania, and I'll get you parts of the French and Indian War after this.